Imagine the scenario, right? You've just been hired by this major established organization.
Oh, yeah, the classic big move.
Exactly. And you've been handed this massive mandate to just fundamentally shake things up. You went through months of interviews. You've got total executive backing, this bold vision.
We're fired up.
Yeah.
Uh,
You are bringing tons of energy to this new role. You are going to be the undisputed change agent.
right.
But then you fast forward like 6 to 12 months, and somehow, well, absolutely nothing has changed.
No, nothing.
Your grand initiatives are just stalled in some committee. Your original mandate feels like a distant memory. And you are literally just trying to survive the day-to-day operations. I mean, it's a story we hear all the time.
We really do. And it happens in every sector, from Fortune 500 companies down to massive healthcare conglomerates.
Yeah, totally.
And the natural reflex is to just look at that stalled executive and blame the individual.
Right, like it's their fault.
Exactly. The narrative becomes, well, they just didn't have what it takes, or they weren't a culture fit, or they just couldn't handle the pressure of the big leagues.
But the research we are looking at today tells a completely different, much more systemic story.
It really does. It's fascinating.
So today's deep dive is looking into this structural phenomenon called institutional absorption. We've got a really heavy stack of organizational behavior research today, plus deep case studies and institutional theory.
Some really great sources in here.
Oh, absolutely. And our mission today is to figure out why organizations systematically neutralize the very disruptive talent that they spend, frankly, enormous amounts of capital to recruit.
Millions sometimes, yeah.
Right. And more importantly, we want to look at the structural blueprints required to actually fix it. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly are we talking about when we use the term like institutional absorption?
Well, to put it simply, institutional absorption is this invisible process where an organization essentially assimilates a potentially disruptive person into its existing cultural and political norms.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, the system basically neutralizes their capacity to make meaningful changes. But, and this is the critical part of the definition, the organization does this while maintaining a surface-level commitment to reform.
So they're saying one thing but doing another.
Exactly. I mean, this isn't about, like, a group of executives plotting in a smoky room to maliciously sabotage the new hire.
Right. It's not a conspiracy.
No, not at all. It's the organization's systemic, almost gravitational pull toward the status quo. It's just how mature institutions naturally maintain their equilibrium when faced with what they see as an internal threat.
Okay, knowing what it is one thing, but I want to understand how this actually plays out in real time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, no one walks into a high-stakes job on Monday morning and instantly abandons their vision by Tuesday, right?
No, of course not.
There has to be like a timeline to this decay.
There is a very specific timeline, actually. And researchers John Gabbaro and Michael Watkins, they've mapped this out beautifully in the sources.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so when you first arrive, you're shielded by this honeymoon phase. You have your mandate, the spotlight is on you, and, people are generally on their best behavior.
Right.
The first 90 days are really all about establishing credibility and doing your listening tours. You might even get a few quick cosmetic wins.
The classic honeymoon period. Because you haven't actually touched anyone's budget or headcount yet, so everyone's still smiling.
Exactly. You haven't threatened anything real yet. But the critical juncture, the moment you hit the invisible wall, so to speak, usually happens right around months 4 to 8.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah, the absorption risk escalates sharply right there because you stop being the abstract new hope, right? And you start becoming entangled in the actual everyday operational machinery of the system.
Because you're actually doing the job now.
Right. You are now responsible for quarterly metrics.
Which means you're suddenly subject to the mechanics of the system. And looking at the sources, they highlight 3 main forces driving this, and they are incredibly subtle.
Very subtle.
The first one is cultural gravity, which is a concept rooted in Edgar Schein's research. It's the established norms, right? The unwritten rules and hidden assumptions that basically just drag new entrants into conformity through constant social reinforcement.
Yeah, and that gravity, it manifests in really small ways, like how meetings are run or what information gets shared or who gets invited to those impromptu discussions after the official meeting ends.
Oh, the meeting after the meeting.
Exactly. It's the constant unspoken reminder of, that is just not how we do things around here. And over time, the new executive just stops proposing radical ideas simply to avoid the exhausting friction of being the outlier in every single room.
That sounds exhausting. And I mean, if the culture doesn't wear you down, the money definitely will.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to the second mechanism, which is reward system misalignment.
Right, and this relies heavily on Stephen Kerr's classic management concept, the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B. The organization explicitly tells you, hey, we want you to drive massive disruptive transformation. But when you look at how your bonus is actually calculated,
It's a totally different story.
right, how resources are allocated, the actual criteria for your next promotion, the system only pays out for conformity, risk avoidance, and hitting those conservative quarterly targets.
So, like, imagine you're a new vice president and you know a complete software overhaul is going to take 2 years, right? And it's going to cause a short-term dip in productivity.
Right.
But your bonus is tied to a strict year-end profitability target. The system is literally asking you to risk your own livelihood and your career trajectory to execute the change they allegedly hired you for.
It creates an impossible math problem for the individual. I mean, the system will absorb you because you will inevitably revert to the behaviors that get you paid and keep you employed.
Naturally.
And if you do decide to fight that battle, you run straight into the third mechanism, which is political attrition.
Right.
Every single decision you try to push through requires coalition building. You have to navigate these hidden influence networks and fight turf wars against incumbents who have been, defending their fiefdoms for a decade.
So it's not just one big dramatic deceit.
No, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
It's the sheer bone-deep exhaustion of trying to push a boulder uphill every single day.
Okay, I do want to push back on this framework for a second, though.
Sure.
Wait, is this just a fancy academic term for, like, socialization or standard onboarding? I mean, aren't organizations supposed to assimilate new hires so they don't just run around breaking things?
That is a vital distinction, and the researchers are actually very careful to separate the two.
Okay.
Socialization is about integrating a person into a productive role. You absolutely want a new hire to learn the software, understand the reporting structure, align with the company's core mission.
Right, you want them to be useful.
Exactly. You are socializing them to be productive. Absorption, however, specifically neutralizes their disruptive potential.
Ah, I see.
It takes someone who is hired explicitly to challenge and change the system, and it grinds them down until they are merely preserving the system.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, under absorption, their productive capacity remains totally intact. They still answer emails, they still file reports, but their reform capacity is completely destroyed.
That distinction makes the concept so much more tangible. I want to look at what this invisible wall looks like in real, everyday industries. Because the literature dives into this concept by Pfeffer and Sutton called the rhetoric-reality gap.
Right, the rhetoric-reality gap. This describes the space where companies genuinely express a desire for change. They announce the new initiatives, they publish the glowing press releases.
They pay top dollar to recruit that visionary talent.
Exactly. But they simultaneously operate deeply entrenched systems that are fundamentally designed to resist that very change.
You know what this sounds like? Why do companies spend thousands on executive search fees if they just want things to stay the same? It's like an organization's immune system attacking a transplanted organ, right? Even though the body desperately needs it to survive.
Well, I see where you're going with that, but the research suggests we actually need to look at it a bit differently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because an immune system's primary goal is to destroy and kill the foreign body. Absorption is much more insidious than that.
How so?
The organization doesn't want to destroy the new executive. It wants to assimilate them. It's more like a systemic rewiring.
Okay.
The organization keeps the transplanted organ alive, but forces it to pump the exact same blood and the exact same rhythm as the failing organ it replaced. It neutralizes the threat by making the new element indistinguishable from the old system.
Wow. That is a much more terrifying way to look at it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not destruction, it's total assimilation. Let's look at the concrete examples from the sources, because this plays out really vividly in healthcare.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that the research shows this phenomenon is actually most prevalent in highly professionalized organizations.
Wait, really? You'd think the opposite.
Right. You would naturally assume that places filled with highly educated, rational actors, like hospitals, would be the most open to necessary evidence-based change. But the exact opposite is true.
Because the case study details a hospital system that brings in a new chief patient experience officer, and they deliberately recruit someone from outside the medical field, someone with like a Silicon Valley tech or high-end hospitality background.
Right.
And the mandate is clear: modernize care, bring us into the 21st century, and make the entire hospital system patient-centered.
And within 6 months, they are completely neutralized.
Just like that.
Yep. In highly professionalized settings, peer networks and professional identity, like the informal networks of seasoned physicians, they completely supersede formal organizational authority. The new executive has the C-suite title and the official mandate, but the clinical power structures hold all the actual decisional control. The doctors simply close ranks.
And what happens to the newcomer?
They get isolated from the real levers of power and eventually absorbed. They're forced to just, manage surface-level patient surveys and waiting room decor rather than fundamentally changing how care is actually delivered.
That is wild. And the sources show this identical dynamic in the tech sector, just with the roles completely reversed.
Right, the non-technical executive.
Exactly. A fast-growing startup realizes they need operational discipline, so they hire a non-technical executive from a traditional Fortune 500 company to implement structure. But because the startup's culture is entirely dominated by engineering, the veteran developers maintain this informal veto power over any operational decisions.
Yeah, if they don't like a new process, they just ignore it.
Right. They simply ignore it. The new executive is totally defanged.
And in both the hospital and the tech startup, the organization's rhetoric, we want a better patient experience or we need professional management, is completely detached from the reality of who holds the structural power.
We've covered the mechanics and the organizational blind spots, but diving into these sources, the aspect that struck me the hardest was actually the human cost.
Oh, too.
Like, what does this friction actually do to the human being trapped in the middle of it? Because the psychological toll described in the research is just really heavy.
It is. We often talk about failed transformations in terms of wasted budget or lost market share, but we really have to talk about professional identity threat.
Right.
This concept, which is heavily explored by researcher Giampiero Petriglieri, looks at what happens internally when your entire self-concept is built around being a transformational leader. You view yourself as an innovator, right? Someone who challenges conventions and leaves a lasting impact.
But the organization's gravity is forcing you into this conformist, bureaucratic behavior just to survive the week.
Exactly. You are placed in a psychological vice. You're forced to choose between maintaining your authentic identity, which, guarantees you will be marginalized, stonewalled, or eventually fired, or adapting to the institutional norms, which feels like a profound moral and personal failure. It is a literal violation of who you believe yourself to be.
And the sources take this even further, applying the concept of moral injury or ethical distress to these corporate roles, which is crazy because we usually only hear about moral injury in the context of combat veterans or trauma nurses.
Right. Yeah.
But think about a corporate sustainability director or a patient safety officer. You are hired specifically to stop systemic harms, to reduce carbon emissions or prevent medical errors. And then you find yourself forced by the system to just manage compliance paperwork and spin PR narratives, all while you watch the actual harm continue unabated.
Yeah, that is the defining characteristic of ethical distress. You were recruited to fix a dysfunction, but you slowly realize the structure requires you to be complicit in perpetuating it.
That's awful.
And this internal conflict is really compounded by hindrance stress.
Oh, yeah. So challenge stress is the good kind. It's the energizing pressure of tackling a complex problem, learning a new skill, or pushing a team to a big launch.
Right.
But hindrance stress is just debilitating. If you've ever felt that crushing, soul-sucking pressure from having to navigate endless office politics or defend initiatives that have no real executive support and you're fighting invisible red tape rather than doing your actual job,
Yeah.
that is hindrance stress.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this individual burnout doesn't just ruin one person's career for a few years. It leads directly to what researchers call strategic drift for the entire organization.
Strategic drift.
Right. The company creates this elaborate illusion of progress, what we might call strategy theater, while core operations remain totally stagnant.
And eventually the broader ecosystem catches on, right? Customers experience the same bad service, investors see the stalled growth, employees see the failed internal initiatives. The organization completely loses the trust of its stakeholders.
Absolutely. Stakeholders simply adjust their expectations downward. And the tragic downstream effect is that the high-performing employees, the ones who actually wanted the change and believed the rhetoric,
They leave.
yeah, they experience a psychological contract breach. They realize the company wasn't serious, and they walk out the door. The organization is ultimately left only with the incumbents who are perfectly comfortable with the stagnation.
Well, I refuse to leave you, the listener, trapped in this depressing reality where the status quo always wins.
Fair enough.
If individual resilience and talent aren't enough to beat this institutional gravity, how do organizations successfully pull off massive transformations?
Well, the core undeniable argument across all this literature is that organizations have to stop relying on the myth of the hero change agent.
The lone hero.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You cannot hire one incredibly talented, charismatic person, drop them into a resistance system, and expect them to single-handedly defeat systemic gravity.
It's just not possible.
Sustainable organizational change requires deliberate architectural interventions.
Let me stop you there because that raises a vital question for anyone currently in one of these roles. Does this mean individual talent doesn't matter at all?
Oh, no.
Like if I'm a change agent listening to this right now, am I just a passenger at the mercy of my company's architecture?
No. Talent absolutely matters. A highly skilled, resilient change agent is the essential fuel for transformation.
Okay.
But the research is clear. Without the right organizational architecture, even the most potent fuel will just burn out. You need both.
Fuel and the engine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But historically, companies only focus on recruiting the talent, completely ignoring the architecture. So, to break the cycle of absorption, leaders have to implement 3 specific structural blueprints. The first is political capital accumulation.
Right. Change agents need structured, institutionalized coalitions, not just individual charm.
Yes.
And the sources highlight the turnaround of Microsoft under Satya Nadella as like the masterclass in this.
Oh, it's brilliant.
When Nadella took over, Microsoft had this notoriously toxic, siloed, highly competitive culture that was actively stifling innovation. And he didn't just hire a bunch of culture experts and hope they could persuade people to be nicer.
No, he built an architectural intervention.
Exactly.
He fundamentally altered the governance structure at the very top. He created the senior leadership team and mandated that it function as a true, unified coalition.
Because before that, they were all fighting each other.
Right. Under the old regime, a mid-level innovator trying to combine, say, a Windows feature with a cloud feature would face 2 warring VP fiefdoms, and they'd spend all their energy just negotiating peace treaties.
Sounds like a nightmare.
But Nadella structurally forced those VPs to share a single scorecard and share priorities. This meant that change agents deeper in the organization didn't have to build political capital from scratch for every single project they were operating under the protective umbrella of an established coalition.
That is so smart. It moves the burden of politics from the individual to the architecture. Which brings us to the second intervention. Reward realignment. Because if you genuinely want change, you have to literally pay for it.
You have to solve the Stephen Kerr problem. You cannot reward A while hoping for B. And we see this brilliantly executed in the Cleveland Clinic case study.
Yes. When the Cleveland Clinic decided they had to transform into a truly patient-centered organization, they knew the doctors were the absolute key to making it happen. But in the existing system, doctors were compensated and promoted based strictly on clinical excellence, like mortality stats, research output, surgical efficiency.
Right.
So if a doctor spent 15 extra minutes comforting a scared patient, their efficiency metrics dropped and they were structurally punished. Patient experience just wasn't in the map.
It wasn't rewarded at all.
So the clinic fundamentally changed the literal compensation and promotion formulas. They made patient experience scores a significant, non-negotiable component of a physician's pay and a hard requirement for leadership promotion.
And think about how that alters institutional gravity. Suddenly, driving patient-centered change is no longer a distraction or a career liability.
It's the goal.
Empathy became structurally rewarded. It became a career accelerator. The formal reward system was finally perfectly aligned with the stated organizational rhetoric.
Okay, the third major structural blueprint is strategic resource control. Because if you are brought in to change a company, you need your own money.
Oh, definitely.
If a change agent is constantly forced to go hat in hand, begging operational managers for budget out of existing revenue streams, they will be absorbed.
They will, because operational managers will always, without fail, prioritize the short-term metrics they are judged on.
Of course.
If an innovation team has to pull from the main IT budget, the main IT manager is always going to prioritize keeping current servers running over funding some risky new prototype.
Yeah, that's just human nature.
Right. Without independent budget authority, the system signals to the entire company that the transformation is completely optional.
And Amazon's two pizza teams are cited in the research as the gold standard for resource control.
Yes, they are.
When Amazon wants to innovate, they don't force a new team to constantly negotiate with the core retail business for scraps. They create a small team, small enough to be fed by two pizzas, right?
Right.
And they give them a defined, locked budget, an extended timeline, and the total authority to make their own technology and hiring choices.
Yeah, they deliberately build a structural financial bubble around that team to insulate them from the enterprise's operational constraints and that gravitational pull of the core business.
That makes so much sense.
That resource autonomy is what prevents the absorption of their innovation capacity. They aren't fighting the institutional immune system because the architecture protects them until their new idea is strong enough to scale.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started with the thrill of a new mandate and then walked directly into the hidden, creeping quicksand of cultural gravity and reward misalignment. We explored the deeply personal burnout, the identity threat, and ethical distress that this friction causes for the professionals stuck in the middle.
The human cost.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at the structural blueprints required to actually fix it. Building formal leadership coalitions, realigning the literal reward systems, and giving change agents true independent resource control. So what does this all mean for you?
Well, we have spent this entire discussion focusing on how to survive being absorbed or how leadership can fix the architecture. But I want to leave you with a different challenge.
Okay.
Flip the mirror for a moment and look closely at your own behavior within your current organization. Are you part of the institutional gravity for someone else?
Oh, wow.
When a new hire comes into your department with a mandate to shake things up, do you welcome the disruption or do you subtly guide them back to how we do things around here?
That's a great question.
Before we blame the nameless, faceless system for absorbing talent, we really have to ask ourselves if we are the ones quietly enforcing the rhetoric-reality gap.
Wow. Are you the one unintentionally neutralizing someone else's mandate? That is a profound question to walk away with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden forces shaping our work lives and our institutions. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep an eye on your own institutional gravity, and we will catch you next time.